Hi, this is Rafael. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I last posted a video. I've been super busy with work and actually also riding this bike because it has almost been a full year with KTM 890 Adventure R, 9,000 kilometers, even more. So I have some thoughts to share with you. All right, here we go. So if you are here to listen about issues or challenges I had with the bike, I have to disappoint you. There weren't any major issues. I have some rooms for improvement for KTM that I found over the last 10 or 11 months so far, and I will tell that later on. But let me now first focus on why I've chosen this bike and what other bikes were in the consideration phase. And here we go. I will also do micro chapters below for you to move around freely. Those will be highlighting engine, suspension, electronics, and so on and so on. You will find it below. What I should also probably let you know is that I've been riding motorcycles for the last 20 years. There were a few bikes on the road to get here, including 10 years on the middle GS. First it was 800 GS, then 850 GS. Later on CRF 250, Husky 701, and now this. But I still consider myself as an amateur rider. I am not a professional. I just use it for everyday commuting, some travel, and weekend trips just to go around town to enjoy some off-road. So why 890 and why I moved away from 701? So first of all, I went to Romania and back on wheels from Warsaw on 701, and as much as the 701 was perfect in Romania, then getting there and back also on highways was a challenge. I knew that I will be also riding much more on highways next year, and I also knew that I will be riding more and more with a passenger. So even though I loved my 701, it had to go, and I was considering a few bikes on the way. I was riding Honda Africa Twin with DCT, but that was after 701 especially, that was way too heavy, and I was not enjoying that bike at all. I also tried Norden 901 in both versions, so the standard and expedition, and I liked that bike a lot, but it was not available for sale when I was searching for a new motorcycle. And then I took for a test drive 890, and actually I found this to suit me most among many other bikes that I have tested before, for many reasons that I will talk about. I'm sorry, this bike is a little dirty, but you know, I'm riding this, so it gets dirty sometimes. So one of the key reasons why I've chosen 890 Adventure in the R version is the suspension, WP Explore. I took a test drive on Husky 901, the standard version with Apex suspension. I took it on the same roads that I was riding on my 701 Enduro with, again, Explore suspension there, and I felt a significant difference. So I knew that I will not be happy with Apex suspension. I needed to go with Explore, and Explore meant this or 901 Expedition. Again, that was not available. Also, this short windshield worked better for me than the high windshield on the 901 Expedition. With the high windshield, with this window here, there was a lot of buffeting on my helmet. I am 180 centimeters high, and I was really struggling on a highway, like my helmet was going all the time. But with this, I don't have that buffeting. Yes, it is louder, so I use the earplugs, but this covers my whole torso. So for example, you see a lot of bugs here on the windscreen, but when I check my jacket, only like the edges of the shoulders have some bugs, but my torso is completely bug free. So I know it is holding the air away from my chest, which is good, but my helmet is stable. I don't even use any extension on this windshield because I don't think it's necessary. It works for me as expected, as I want it to work for me, so good thing. And the third reason to use the R version is that I like how it looks. I like the design. I think they did a great job in building this structure here compared to previous year's models. I really enjoy how it looks. I like the high fender. I sometimes ride in the mud, and I think that high fender is something that works for me. I don't find it kind of disturbing the highway speeds rides, so all good. Yeah, obviously the most important part is this engine. It just works. I know that people have complaints about the camshaft drive in previous years models. You know, this bike is brand new, 9,000 kilometers, so I have no issues at all. Everything works as you expect from a brand new bike, right? But the engine has power every time I need it. I have absolutely no complaints. Maybe it is even a bit too powerful for those tires. I will get to that later, but yeah, overall the engine is fantastic. Moving away from the engine, but to something close, is the fuel consumption, and I'm getting an average 4.5 liters per 100 kilometers. The lowest I had was 3.5, but that was in Morocco. We were riding really slowly, and I was surprised with the fuel consumption, and I was like, my range was way above 400 kilometers, even 500 kilometers. So you can do it if you ride slowly on this, but it doesn't like to be ridden slowly. So I'm getting an average about 4.5, sometimes more, if I open the throttle more aggressively. Range meter is something that many people complain about. It is funky. It shows, for example, that when you fill it up, it shows that you have range over 200 kilometers. But then very often I see that as soon as it is getting lower, like for example, I am at 230 kilometers and I see that the mark showing that I have over 200 kilometers of range is gone. So it shows 200 kilometers. But then within the next 3 or 5 kilometers, I am losing like 30 kilometers out of range. So it drops from 200 to 170 immediately. And then it goes very fast until it starts blinking red and like demanding to be refilled. And I have a special video that I made around that, so I will play it for you now. All right, so I am at the gas station. You see that my trip was 365 kilometers. The range is already flashing red, showing that I have about 20 kilometers left. The fuel consumption 4.5. Let me see some more information about this trip. So it was 3.5 hours of riding, average speed 101 kilometers per hour, and that was about 70% highway with cruise control set to 120 kilometers per hour and some city traffic. All right, let's see how conservative the range alert is, how much fuel I will be able to add to the tank. So I was only able to add 16 liters, 16.33, which means there's almost 4 more liters of gasoline in the tank. And the learning is that the computer shows the real fuel consumption, 4.5 liters per 100 kilometer, and the alert about the range is very conservative, because you can almost go another, I don't know, 80 kilometers until fuel tank will be empty. So you have 20 liters here, but the bike is requesting to be refilled with more than 4 liters still inside. which I guess if you know it, then you could sometimes push it much further. But the first few rides were kind of surprising, that the range is quite low in the beginning, and then you see that you can only add like 15 liters or 16 liters, and there's still plenty of fuel left in the tank. Let's talk about those brakes, and there is not much to talk about. They're excellent. I know, nothing to complain here. The brakes on both front and rear are great. Nothing to complain. But I can complain a little about this part. This is the most gentle exhaust that I ever had on a motorcycle. It is quiet as a baby. You really need to open up the throttle to hear it roar. But I don't think about changing it. I like quiet exhausts. But I think KTM engineers could spend some time on giving it a bit more character and still meeting the regulations. My favorite example here is obviously my ex F850 GS, that even the stock muffler was doing some kind of work in the sound area. Also, T7 has a great sound to it. This one, you will probably never hear it. But again, I am not thinking about changing it because I like quiet exhausts. And since we are here, let's talk about tires. These are the factory mounted Mitas 07 Plus. Very good on road, but also slippery when the road is wet. I often feel the traction control engaging with acceleration. I often feel ABS working when braking. So in wet conditions, I do not trust them as much as I trusted my TKC 80s on 701. So probably when those will be gone, and you can see the tread depth is still quite high after 9,000 kilometers, because these are probably very like hard compound. But I'm thinking about getting TKC 80s again. I really trust those tires. I've spent many kilometers on TKC 80s, and I think that might be a better choice with my kind of riding. And good thing about those wheels, these are tubeless wheels, which in case of a puncture is much easier to be fixed while on the road. Good stuff. Okay, let's talk about seat. Compared to 701, this seat is fantastic. I can spend days on it. And if you spend some years on a CRF 250 and then on a 701, this feels like a comfortable chair. Of course, when I switch to bikes like the big GS 1200, 1250 GS, this is again feel like wood. But compared to my old bikes, this is very comfy, and honestly I can spend hours on this seat, so I'm not even thinking about changing it. In terms of the riding position, I feel that the foot pegs could be a little lower. I would love less bend in my knee, especially when traveling long distances, but overall the position is comfortable. Let's talk about electronics. A topic that is very vivid on the community, because I have the tech pack unlocked. So it means, for example, cruise control. And when traveling long distances, I love that feature. When the cruise control is enabled, you can change gears and it stays enabled. I know this is something that BMW has introduced in the recent range of GSs, but my 850 didn't have that. So even when the cruise control on, when I was switching gears with the quick shifter, it was disengaging cruise control. This one, cruise control on, quick shifter down or up, it stays on. Cool stuff. Then quick shifter works well up and down. Yeah, between the first gear and the second gear is a bit clunky sometimes, but especially off-road when you need to like drop down a gear, this is super useful. So quick shifter, thumbs up. Riley mode, this is something that I still need to learn more, because I find myself very often just using the off-road mode, and it works for me very well. So I'm not using this very often, but I know it will come with time. I probably need to do one more trip like the one to Morocco, and then remember to use it, because it is very comfortable to just go to off-road mode, and then especially when you're in a group and you ride slowly, then you don't need the Riley mode. But yeah, I know I have to test it more. And the final part of electronics is the motor slip regulation. It is working in the opposite way than the traction control, so it is improving stability during engine braking, or when you're shifting down on a slippery tarmac or in the slippery conditions. It probably works, but honestly, I never know when. Would I buy the tech pack again? Yes, absolutely. This bike is really benefiting from the technology a lot. So I got the tech pack as a part of the offer for this bike. So it was obviously a natural choice, and I would, again, if I would have to buy another bike like this, I would definitely choose a tech pack again. And something that I just recently found out is that the service intervals for this motorcycle are 15,000 kilometers. So when I crossed 9,000, I was starting thinking like, oh, I need to take care of the service really soon. But no, it is 15,000 kilometers. So probably I will be able to finish this season with a late service. That's good. Okay, and finally about the issues, or maybe not issues, but some interesting findings. So my first finding is that I don't know if KTM has introduced the maintenance-free chains, but I was only cleaning it and lubing it, but I never adjusted this chain, and it has stayed within the spec, or even a bit too tight compared to the spec. I have also made another video about that, so you will see it now. Okay, so as you know, the mileage of on my bike is now over 9,000 kilometers, and I have never ever adjusted this chain. So it is quite complex, but you need to measure it around here, and it should be from 2 to 5 millimeters away from the swing arm. It's on the central stand, so the wheel is loose, right? And when I look at this here, it's still far away from spec, so it is still too tight. This is how it came from KTM, and after 9,000 kilometers I have never adjusted this, and this is still far away from being too loose. This is quite crazy. So that chain situation is kind of confusing, because I often hear the chain like working loose and making some noises, but when I put the bike on the center stand, I do it as per manual, it is still very far away from the swing arm. And one technical thing that I sometimes feel when approaching very slowly the red light, for example, and I compress my brake lever gently and softly, and then I push it a bit harder, and then I feel like there is some like clank to it. And I know these are the floating discs, the brake discs, but I don't feel that much of a play on that brake disc that could, you know, make that feeling of a clunk when braking. I will definitely point that out to the service team when I will get there for my yearly service time. People sometimes ask me about the mods to the bike. Honestly, there weren't so many as they were required and necessary to 701. So for example, I have those foot pegs directly from... Oh, interesting sound. I have those directly from 7-1. I didn't like the plastic shield on the sprockets, so I bought this on AliExpress with this shield for the electronics. It was a package. Yeah, obviously the KTM skid plate, because the factory one was very gentle, so I switched to this KTM rugged skid plate, and I like also how it looks. It gives the bike some character, and that's good. Before a trip to Morocco, because I knew there will be some rock riding, also installed this shield for the headlight. Those handguards came directly from 701, as did the mirrors. These are the double take mirrors. A small back on the handlebar, and that's it probably in the front. Oh no, I have 3D printed this part to have my RAM mount here for the bike, for the telephone. There is a USB socket, there's another one here, so you have 2 power sockets. I found this to be strong enough to power up and charge the phone while having it on with Google Maps still working. Those little thingies for the central stand. Many people are asking me about this bag. This is a Kappa Alpha Light Range bag. I don't think they make this anymore, but you can probably find something similar from Kappa. It is quite useful because you can change also the size of this bag if you need some more space, and it's extendable. You know, for gloves, water and things like that, that's absolutely enough. And probably that is the whole list of the mods I did to this bike. There was nothing else necessary to make it adventure ready, to make it travel ready. Absolutely nothing else except for those basic protection and some comfort on the foot pegs parts, and that's it. So no issues with the bike at all. It's been great 9,000 kilometers. I would definitely buy it again. So even now, when there are so many new bikes on the market after 1 year, there is still none other that gets my attention as this one. You know, I feel very happy that I got it, and I also feel that we will spend probably much more than 1 or 2 or 3 years, as long as it will stay so reliable as it was so far. So you know, I sometimes go for long trips. I sometimes go long distances. I sometimes, you know, just have to get in 3.5 hours to the Polish seaside. It's like 350 kilometers from here. So I need to be able to use it on the highway. But then when I can ride environments like this bike also delivers, and I like it a lot about it. It's very universal, and from a perspective of an amateur rider, it is way above my skills, and I know that you can do much more on it. But even for an everyday rider like me, that is no wheelie enthusiast, no hardcore enduro rider, it still delivers a lot of joy. So definitely I would buy it again. If you would have any questions about this bike, please let me know in the comments. I will try my best to upload more videos about this, so please stay tuned. If you found it useful, please give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate that.